Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Lifetime Training Podcast. And I am just ecstatic today to bring you one of my favorite fighters ever in the UFC. He's two-time heavyweight champion, holds the record for the most finishes and the most submissions in UFC heavyweight history, as well as the fastest heavyweight finish in the division. One of the baddest men in the world, fought some of the baddest men in the world and beat them. Welcome to the show, Mr. Frank Mir.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Nice to be on, Jason. Thank you.
Oh man, that's great. And you know, what's cool today is I really want to kind of go into your history, man, of just overcoming a shit ton of adversity and, you know, how, you know, sports has helped you and, you know, overcome those things. And I'd love to kind of just start with some of the stuff that you did, you know, early on, where I know that, you know, you got into wrestling, didn't go so well in high school in the beginning, and next year you turned around and was a state champion. But talk about being a multi-sport athlete and just, you know, how that's kind of transformed and kind of led you to where you are today.
Well, I mean, when you break down sports in general, I mean, we started doing them back when we were first, you know, cavemen coming together as a tribe, right? How do we practice warfare, the characteristics of warfare, you know, the mental toughness, the ambition, the being cunning and strategy. How do we train these things without hurting ourselves? And that way, so we're tough and prepared for when the tribe over the mountain wants to take our food and our women, right? And so that's the essence of all sports. And different sports kind of embody different aspects better. You know, I mean, obviously, you know, football is going to have much more teamwork aspects than wrestling. And so I've always tried to be a multi-sport athlete, because trying to develop different aspects from different areas, like, okay, well, this is going to, you know, like, for example, wrestling is extremely physically hard as far as on your lungs, your anaerobic system. And it's a pain like cardio, like probably relate to somebody, hey, look, you know, go into a steam room and don't leave until, you know, you're the last one standing, right? So it's mental anguish, but it's not really physical anguish as far as, you know, getting boxing, where sometimes you get hit with a shot. It doesn't matter how tough you are. Your body's telling you, hey, man, like, this isn't healthy. We need to stop, you know, we need to find a way out of this or get rid of this guy in front of us. Yeah. And so that's why I've probably just been so enamored with doing all different sports. And that's what I've passed on to my children to make sure that, you know, I've never forced them to do a specific sport. I've always said that you have to do sports though.
Yep. Yep. You know, and that leads into kind of I'll jump to it right now, is just, you know, you've won so many fights after just completely being disoriented, and you see it in fights. Talk me through, like, mentally, what the hell goes on there, and, you know, how you overcome those, or what you do to try to just kind of gather yourself and then, you know, finish the fight off on the other end.
Well, one thing that I've done is I've removed emotional attachment to what's going on in the fight. So, you know, whereas if I'm winning the fight, I got a guy mounted and the crowd's cheering and I can hear, like, oh, they know it's coming. That, like, excitement that, yes, I'm doing well. That's a good boost for energy. But the only problem is that then all of a sudden when you're not doing well, you have almost a drop in energy. You're like, oh man, I'm losing. This is what's going on. Oh, I'm in a bad spot. You know, this is awful. So basically I try to hit it like, I'm a strategist in that form where I'm like, lack for a better terminology, but I'm like trying to be a hitman. You know what I mean? Like, this is just business. You know what I mean? Like, I try to detach myself from it, because the emotions can distract you. They can drive you too hard. And you know, they'll give you that adrenaline dump, and it might not necessarily be productive. And so whether I'm in a bad position or a good position, to me, it's a math problem. You know, that's what it really is. It's like, oh, okay, you're choking me. I have to grab your wrist here, pull the elbow there. That's going to give me the rib cage so I can turn the corner, hit a knee tap. It's just equations, you know, just, and so, and I've taken that to my personal life too. And it's really helped me out as a businessman and as a father and as a husband, because I try not to look at things from an emotional point of view. You know, and obviously emotions are important in certain aspects, but as far as when I make decisions and I'm in the middle of a fight and I'm rocked, I'm not sitting there going, oh man, you know, what's going on? I'm just like, okay, I'm rocked. I can't stand up just yet. Let me go ahead and hold on to his leg. Let me buy out some time. Let me, you know what I mean? It's like, I got to do this, X, Y, and Z. And that's what's always going through my head.
God. Yeah. And that leads into, you know, some of the adversity outside of the ring, obviously, you know, the motorcycle accident and some just lingering stuff that has gone on over the year. And, you know, anything else that you could add besides, you know, what you just said and how you've been able to overcome those things?
Well, I've learned to go ahead and, you know, situations are situations, right? It is what it is. I probably say that 4 or 5 times a day. It is what it is. So like when I first damaged my knee, I sat there, and then I even had to deal with a pain pill addiction for many years afterwards because of that. I just wrote it out in my mind. I was like, okay, this is what I have to do, right? I have to change my style of fighting a little bit, because I have to go in the gym and find out what I am capable of doing well still, and try to avoid the things I'm not doing very well, as far as when I'm on the mat or inside the ring or a cage. And so it became, again, just a math problem. Instead of sitting there, which I think a lot of people do, and I did. I had days like that too. And I really thank my wife for at times snapping me out of it, because sometimes, the eye of the storm, right? It's hard to see past it. I would just work out that, okay, well, this is the situation now. My knee is, and my leg, I have a rod in my femur. This is the new reality. I can sit here and grope about it, and sit on my bed and complain that why me, or run things through my mind like, wow, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I would have done this. But it's a waste of energy. As far as anything I think about what I don't want to do, I save that for when it's time to teach my children. Hey, you can get a motorcycle, but this is the parameters of what we're going to do. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. This is how we're going to go riding. This is who we're going to go riding with. This is the type of bikes you're allowed to have, and whatnot. So, I can sit there and do the what ifs, but I just save it for my kids. And then it's almost like a workout program. The next morning, I'm like, okay, I have to accomplish A, B, and C if I want to get there. And then at the end of the day, when I failed at A and barely made B, and C was a long shot from happening, I sit there and go, okay, what didn't I do right? How come I didn't accomplish my goal? And then I'll try to reorganize in a way and find people that know more than I do, or, find inspiration from books or podcasts or whatever the case, to be able to overcome and those circumstances.
Yeah. And when you really strip down what you just said too, with, the relation back to the math problem, because there's zero emotion in math. It's just, there might be emotion because you're not good at it, or you think you're not good at it. Right? But at the end of the day, when you simply just look at it as a math problem, man, that's pretty powerful as an analogy that I've never even thought of. So thanks. That's awesome.
No, thank you.
Well, you've also dealt with some weight fluctuations throughout the years, and, up and down and all around, and, getting to what we'll get into, what you're training for now today. But talk to me about what happened there, and how that impacted, your career and the different weight classes and your ability to perform.
Well, basically, I was always gifted as an athlete. And then my car wreck only kind of solidified a different gift that I found out that I had, which is my mental toughness. As far as my aptitude for which made me lazy in some form. Hear me out, right? Yeah. So before that, I was always the strongest, fastest guy in the gym. I ran an 11.6 and 100. It was my PR in high school at a 240 pounds, deadlifting 500 pounds by the time I was 15 years old. So like, to get me to go to the gym and work out, I was, the 1 year before football, I never went to a single practice. I was lifeguarding. I wanted to hang out with girls, that was my idea of, training. And then I would show up and do extremely well. Wrestling, I sucked at it for the first couple of matches, but then all of a sudden, before you know it, I was one match away from being the state champion my freshman or my junior year, the first year I ever wrestled. And the next year I smashed everybody and went undefeated in the state, and went on to go to the nationals and go 2-2, which my daughter redeemed me. She won nationals 2 weeks ago.
Congrats,
so
man.
The Mir still won it. And so, with 2 years of experience. And so, where was I at right now? Sorry, I made the joke about my daughter.
No, you were just explaining and going into just how, with regards to the weight fluctuations.
The weight fluctuations.
Yeah.
So the mental toughness aspect of it. So after I got injured with my leg, got hurt, I did approach training more intelligently, but then I developed this ability to just go into any situation and survive. I had fights where I was losing and I just turned it around and I made it happen. So I started kind of developing a personality of, not planning. My wife would go, hey, we're going to Disneyland. Are we going to plan out lunch, dinner, everything? I'm like, no, we'll just figure it out when we get there. I've gone to different countries and it drives my wife nuts. She goes, oh, did you talk to the people that you're meeting? I'm like, nah. She goes, so when you get off the plane, you don't know who you're going with? I'm hoping someone holds up a sign. She goes, so someone could just hold up the wrong sign and kidnap you. I'm like, yeah, I'll figure it out as we go. It'll be a story, So I've always been like, I always make that joke, I'm a cat, I land on my feet. But that led to me having a weight problem. Because leading up to that, I would always just, diet-wise, dial it in for the last 8 weeks before a fight. And in my 20s, I showed up with a six-pack. All of a sudden I get to my 30s and me dialing it in for 8 weeks before a fight wasn't happening anymore. I struggled with it because I was not looking at it like, well, hey, I can do this. I've done it so many times. Like, yes, the 20-year-old version of you did this, no problem. The 30-year-old version needs to go ahead and plan a little bit better, And so that led to the increase in weight, which also didn't help me with my injuries, only exacerbated the situation to where now, like, I'm just beat up, I'm hurting. And really the turnaround was probably about 18 months ago. I had a midlife crisis. I'm like, God, it's over with. I'm done. I can't fight anymore, at a high level. My body, I went into the gym and I put 135 on the bar. I was like, oh, I'll start lifting again. And after the 7th rep, I racked it and was just sitting there going, I can't believe how I'm 300 pounds and I can't even bench press my own body weight for 10 reps. I was in horrible shape, hurting. I started talking to Steve Date, who's, GM for a manager there, runs the Lifetime Fitness in Summerlin in Vegas. And he kind of opened my eyes to a whole different outlook on how to be fit as a lifestyle and not just preparation for a fight. So that's when I kind of turned into from a fighter to more of a martial artist, to where I was like, I'll train hard in camp for a fight and clean up my diet. But once the fight's over with, it was, party central, right? And so now I live the lifestyle of like, okay, well, if I do this every day and if I do this, I can stay at 70%, 80%, be healthy, be happy. And then when I get close to a fight, peak for it. And the other thing that really honestly, sometimes I don't want to keep secrets from the fans, but a bioaccelerator, I went down to Colombia, I went and did stem cell, and that had a huge impact on giving me that jump start of, I did that back in the December before last. And by February, I was back to lifting and hard. Beautiful. And feeling great.
Yep. No, and you mentioned, the experience with Lifetime, and I know that that's kind of become a bit of a second home for you. And with Steve, would you dive into, again, as you're prepping for the boxing match, which we're going to get into a little bit later, that you've got coming up, but what you mentioned some of the things, but how has that impacted you? What are the things that I believe you work with Steve a little bit too? Yeah. How has that impacted you, and how has Lifetime helped you get back to and ready for the fight?
Well, one thing Steve told me very beginning of our conversations, it was 2 things that impacted me the most. He goes, 1, weight shouldn't be hurting you. He goes, when we get done with the weight training session, you should be more flexible, more mobile, increasing your strength, but this should be a thing that benefits you. If your weight training is breaking you down and hurting you, you're already hurting yourself in the gym, as a fighter. He goes, now you're just burning the candle from both ends. Of course you're destroyed. And this is probably what's led to your body being the way it is right now. And the other thing too, it's funny because in our world, everybody wants to do this, HIIT training or the high intensity interval training for cardio, right? So we sprint for so many seconds and jog steady state cardio afterwards. And I do that so much in fighting, and I do think that that's a small percentage of cardio. But as far as the baseline cardio, the one thing that Steve has had me on now is every day I do 45 minutes of cardio, regardless of what I have planned that day. I could be the most hellacious sparring set up for me. I go and do cardio first. I keep my heart rate about 140 is my magic number that I try to hit. So if I look down at the scale and it's 134, I got to get it above 135. If I look down and it's 147, then I go ahead and ease off a little bit. And I just do that for 45 minutes every morning. And I've really noticed an increase in my overall cardio. Even my trainers, which I'm not a guy who's known for cardio, I'm known for being fast and being strong. But as far as just output, the guys are like, oh man, your output. I'm like, honestly, guys, I've always done this high intensity training, hit pads and wrestle and spar hard. But I've never felt better and had better baseline cardio. And I said, guys, the only thing I can attribute to, is the steady state cardio, which sometimes the guys in the fight gym we make fun of. They're like, oh, that's bodybuilder cardio. You're just trying to get ripped. I'm like, yes, which is not a bad thing, but no, it really does help flush the body. And, Steve explains it better than I do. The endocrine system and your lymph nodes just constantly just helps clean you out. And my recovery is so much better. I'm nowhere near as sore or tired or beat up.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, there's so much they call it, what you've used the term base, but cardio based building, and that cardio based building works on different metabolic processes than the HIIT stuff does. And the mitochondria increase and your ability to recover increases. So That's great that you've been able to do that. Cause a question I was going to get into is just, the traditional conditioning that happens, in fighting, and, relating that back to like what you said, is a lot of fighters will get ready for the fight. And then once it's over, it's kind of like, okay, let it go, as opposed to
Right.
staying with it over the long haul. So, Frank, you were talking about how you've changed your cardio and, the popularity of HIIT and the popularity of people getting ready for a fight just prior to the fight, or 4 to 8 weeks versus the base building. So would you mind diving into, again, just what conditioning has actually worked in the past for you, and again, what you're doing now?
Well, I mean, in the past, I used a lot of high intensity training. We would do what's called a shark drill, for example. That was probably the main staple of my cardio, where, for MMA, we have a 5-minute round, and I would probably pick 3 or 4 different guys would help me out. One guy would be a pad holder. So essentially what you see guys holding pads in the gym and hitting, he would have certain objectives that, hold pads and, for standing up here. Then I would have another guy who was designated the wrestler. So when I went with him, we would just be wrestling. Then I would have a guy who was designated through the equipment that he's wearing, to fight on the ground. And then one guy would be set up for sparring. He'd actually have full 16 or 18 ounce gloves on, headgear. Sometimes even as I got later in my career, just because of my weight being stronger and hitting harder, they would wear almost riot gear, so I could really beat them up. And then the whistle would blow, right? And so one guy would be organizing, and okay, and point to whoever was supposed to attack me, basically. Well, the pad holder would come up, and we would do a minute of pads, right? Then all of a sudden I'd have to spar with the guy, and we might only spar for 30 seconds. I would never get the timing right. And I would have one guy would actually be my stall guy. So if I knew I was going with him, the idea was to shut him down, but me try to gain my breath, like, okay, he's going to try to grab me around the waist, and I'm just going to do enough to block him, but not to beat him. I'm trying to stall to regain. That's my recovery time. So instead of, dancing around, or, guys will take a break, my recovery was still movement, but movement with trying to be intelligent and smart and work somebody off of me, almost akin to getting rocked in the fight. Or sometimes in the fight, you are gassed and you have to slow the pace down. So that I would do, for, if I had a 3-round fight, we would do it for 3 rounds, and it would be extremely intense and very hard. And that was the staple, and we call it the shark drill, because it was like basically a bunch of sharks eating you up, right? You could win 1 round maybe once you were in shape, but rounds 2 and 3 looked like a massacre. And so I did that, and I still use that training formula. But as far as that was, because I used that only to get me in shape, I was always beaten up, always broken down. My endorphins were always shot. I had probably adrenal fatigue at all times, And so there were some fights, it was funny, that I would look at now that I know more about training, and go, oh, everybody kept saying, no, you got to do more, you got to do more. I'm like, no, I was doing too much. That was too much training. I was burnt out. I was overtrained. I had nothing left in the gas tank. Basically I left my fight in the gym, And so now with the steady state cardio as a base, building up that base, my performance is much better when I do those drills. I recover much faster. And also too, the next day when I'm not doing those drills, the recovery is on a different level. And the other mistake I think a lot of fighters make, besides not doing the steady state cardio and only doing hard sparring, hard sprints, is weight training. It still almost has a stigma. Guys will train weights when they're, they don't have a fight schedule, but the minute they get a fight camp, and I was one of those guys also, 8 weeks before fight, we dump weight training, which is dumb, because one, I tell people this, like, hey, endurance also has to do with strength, moving something. If I make you 20% stronger, well, now it's 20% easier to run with your legs. Let's say if you do, squats, and now you've increased your leg strength without necessarily increasing your weight. Well, you just made your endurance that much easier. It'd be like, you working with a 50-pound kettlebell, and then I get to move around with a 10-pound kettlebell. Well, that's giving an example of I'm stronger than you, right? Because I'm basically moving an easier weight. Of course, my endurance will be better. So burning it from that area, and also too, just the injury prevention. This fight leading up is probably the least I've ever been injured as far as body broken up, destroyed, leading up to it. But that's because my weight workouts now, not every time, and I also train with Nick Best, world's strongest man competitor. So leading up to, that's the only workouts I've stopped leading up 2 weeks before the fight. I haven't done any of the stone carries or no heavy 3-rep maxes that I do with Nick.
Yeah.
Everything is all just the Steve workouts now, where it's higher reps. In fact, sometimes I go in there and I don't push myself at all. I'm like, my last bench pressing workout was 2.25 for 3 sets of 10, which, I mean, I bench over 400 pounds right now. So that wasn't stressing me. And I mean, at the end, it's not, I don't want a hard work. I'm just that keeping the fluids and the motion. Yeah. Maintaining strength and, hey, keeping what you've worked for this hard camp,
Well, so many people too, they don't understand the difference between, there's various different strength qualities too, right? So strength endurance is a different quality than pure, brute strength. So, the ability to maintain that strength over time is what you're talking about, which I think is great. Obviously the ability to recover, there's sleep and there's eating. I know that you went vegan and then, paleo and kind of jumped around.
I was looking for the magic bullet. I didn't want to have to diet.
But what are you doing now? And kind of what actually, before we get into that, how did you feel when you went vegan and what made that quick change back to, I guess paleo or whatever you're doing now?
It just was very difficult. I think you lose weight on a vegan because there's so many less options when you're out and about traveling, and, as far as health benefits, I mean, nutritionally, I just don't think that vegan is the most optimal diet. There's been enough research done with everything from the 7-day evangelists, different groups where they've been able to segment how they eat and, the blue zone thing where we talk about the 5 longest living and vegans just aren't there. Is it a healthy way to eat? I'm not saying it's not, but I feel that the human body, there's certain things that we do need that we get from meat. I might make an argument that I think we eat too much meat, as a society, even the greatest hunter back in the day wasn't eating 3 or 4 times a day, ham, steak, and eggs, So that being said, like I do follow a much more balanced diet. I have a guy named Darren Dean who does combat nutrition. And so like every 3 or 4 days, I send him a picture of myself, what I look like on the scale, quick description of how I feel. And he adjusts my carbs, proteins, and fats for the next 3 days. And it's essentially like, I eat 6 meals a day. 3 of them are protein shakes. That's one thing I do is I do vegan protein shakes, better for absorption for me. For whatever reason, when I start drinking 2 and 3 protein shakes, whey for me binds, and I'm not lactose intolerant. I can have this piece of cheese and drink some chocolate milk.
Your wife just doesn't want to be around you.
No, I'm very unpleasant to be around, and I just feel bad. Then it actually makes it hard for me to eat the other meals because I'm not breaking things down and I'm blocked up and whatnot. So, I follow pretty much a balanced, diet in that form. Breakfast is, today I had a avocado toast on the Dave's Killer bread with, 4 eggs. Lunch today is going to be chicken and rice with one of those vegetable packs that I throw inside the microwave. And so a much more balanced approach. Now, being a vegan for moral reasons, I'm never going to argue that. I completely get that. But as far as if you're going to ever tell me that it's scientifically proven to be the healthier way, I'm all, actually, no, guys, it's not. I mean, we're omnivores. We're bears. For lack of a better.
It's like everything right now is there's everyone lives and argues the extremes as opposed to how do I bring it all together? And like you were saying, you balance them both out. What works, man? So that's great. Well, obviously you got a fight coming up, and I'd love to. How have you trained differently? You decided to box, versus, what you're used to, and, how has the training changed? And then we'll dive into, some of the things that you've had to deal with changing of opponents and the rest of it.
Yeah, basically, I mean, I eliminated grappling from my workouts because up until then, my normal workout schedule, I get up in the morning, I do cardio with my wife. We get to the gym about 8:30. I'm on by about 8:30. I'm jumping on the machine. I try not to jump on it later because I want to get off at 9:15 so that I can have my shake and chill out before my next practice, which is at 11:30. Typically for MMA, my 11:30 workout is my main combat workout, and it switches up. Monday we do grappling, against on the floor mostly. Tuesday we do sparring. So we have the class, we teach a technique where everybody warms up right now, but then we always do 5 rounds of 5 minutes of training live with everybody. And there's like about 50 to 60 professional and amateur fighters of all different weights on the mat. So we all have a lot of partners to work with. Tuesday we spar, and we spar with big gloves, which means that we're going to hit each other hard. It looks akin to boxing type of workout, but we still use takedowns because we want to always make sure that you're being honest, that we're MMA fighters, that, if you start developing a striking style that allows you to get taken down easily, you're wasting your time. but we don't fight on the ground. Once the guy gets a takedown, because we have big gloves on, it's hard to, with the boxing gloves, to grab a wrist or to hold. Yeah. We realize, okay, once I establish position, you're probably not going to get up, and I can't hold you down very well either. Both are limited. This isn't real. So we get up to our feet. Wednesday we'll, also clinched, but that's more of our transitional stuff, takedowns. So, we'll do a lot of stuff where we'll spar with little gloves, but it's like, hey, don't hit each other hard. We're actually going to mostly focus on the wrestling, but we're wrestling with punches. So if you try to do a real low collar tie, one of us will bring our knee up and touch you in the face going, hey man, this is MMA, this ain't wrestling. Thursday we spar, and it looks purely like an MMA fight. We put on the small gloves, we wear thin shin guards, and it looks just like an MMA fight. If I take you down the first 30 seconds, you have 4.5 minutes to get up, or you're going to be on the ground the whole time. And vice versa. If I can't take you down, it looks like a stand-up fight the whole time. Friday, we work against the cage. So all our wrestling, every time we stop, we go against the cage or a wall. We have the walls padded in the gym. So there's plenty of room for us all to pick a piece. So, and then I would come back at night at 5:30 or 6, and I work technique. Whatever I did that morning, whether if it was grappling against the cage, then that night I would work technical work of grappling against the cage. Hey, what mistakes I made, what do I want to see improvement on? Now the biggest change is that I either spar or hit pads at that 11:30 workout. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday is hard sparring. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's hard pad work. So pad work, not so much to get better at fighting, but we do work technique within it, but we're not going to stop the pad work because I'm doing something incorrectly. We'll adjust it later. We just go and we try to simulate the fight as much as possible for rounds, distance, and timing, and push your cardio really hard. And then at nighttime, I come in at 5 o'clock and I flip whatever we did. So if I sparred that day, we hit pads at night, technical. If I hit pads real hard that day, they're kind of called Dutch drills. Anybody who wrestles in high school would probably understand. It's like semi-live goes, where I'm like, hey, Jason, today I'm going to work on defending that left hook, right? So when you're my partner and you're going up against me, you're going to really concentrate on throwing left hooks. Now, you might throw a right and a jab every now and then to keep me honest, and you're not just going to go left hook, left hook, left hook. I mean, that's obviously monotonous, and that's not going to train my brain. We're going to spar around, but it's not real live. It's a form technique of what I need to work on, a technique. And what's coming back at you. And some of the guys at that moment, I'll usually put body shields on them so they have like a belly belt. Mm-hmm. So that way, when I throw back at them, they don't have to worry about trying to defend themselves. They can just work on being a good partner. And then the padding takes most of the blunt force out of the attack. And then at 2 o'clock during that break in between is when I go lift. Mondays and Saturdays, I lift with Nick Best, world's strongest man competitor. And I do a push-pull legs split. So Monday is pushing, Tuesday is pulling, Wednesday legs, Thursday push, Friday pull again, and Saturday's legs. When I do legs with Nick on Saturday, that's extremely heavy. We warm up a ton. I mean, we start out, because he has the weights that are 55 pounds a plate. So, we start out, 155, and we make 50-pound increment jumps. And basically there's 5 or 6 of us working out there. We make jumps, I think my last time I can stop at about 550 is my 3-rep max right now for working out. Nick's, he works all the way up to his last squat. He did a single last week with 849. So, but as the weight goes up, we drop off. My kids lift with me, so we all lift the same weight, then we add weight, all lift the same weight, we add weight. And then as you can't lift, you got to break down. The other guys keep on going. On those days too, I do a lot of the cardio that it's very anaerobic. Whereas, we'll set up sandbags that weigh anywhere between 250 pounds to the 315, 308, because the sand kind of give or take, and a keg. So there's 5 implements we use, and we put them 10 meters away from the back of his truck. And so you got to pick the bag up as quickly as you can, throw in the back of the truck, turn around as quickly as you can. We use the term sprint very loosely. It's like a very fast walk at this point. And so we do that. And it takes you probably about a good minute 15, minute 30 to maybe finish it. Nick does it like in 45 seconds. we finish it, and then you get a break, and then we take as long of a break as you need, you know, because everybody else is going too. And then usually we take 10 to 15 minutes in between sets. We only do 2, maybe 3 sets max, because it's an all-out go. Yeah. So we do all those type of things. I do a lot of Atlas stones where, you know, we pick them up. Right now I work with a 300-pound one, 320, and I put it up on top of a bench, pull it down, put it on the bench, pull it down. Mondays I also work out with Nick. So I do a heavy chest day on that day. And so, and the same kind of routine. He focuses on the bench press. And then when we're done after building up weight, my 2 rep max right now, I've gotten 370 for 2 or 3, 2.5, they would say when you fail on the 3rd one, right? But you know, Nick works all the way up to 500 pounds right now. And so
always putting it in perspective.
Yeah. When people go, oh, you're strong. I'm all, I'm strong for a fighter. Yeah. If you get all the fighters in a room together, I look like a stud. You know what I mean? Like I'm the prettiest girl on the Glee squad, you know, whatever it's called. Like, you know, where the flag, you know, they're not a cheerleader, but the step down, right? And so then Tuesday and Wednesday, I go and I do more volume work on those 2 days to kind of recover from, you know, Monday and Tuesday being hard. So what I do is I do a high rep workout on Tuesday with my back. I pretty much, you know, do anything between 30 to 50 reps, you know, and I only do 2 sets. And then I do the same thing on Wednesday for legs. I don't go as high as 50 reps because just I find it just crushes me. I mean, just to do 50 squats, like it's too much for me. But I'll do reps of 20, and I use the safety bar squat. We do squats. I work on my form for what I want to improve on Saturday if there's something I was doing wrong, and I do much more of a workout probably than most people would be used to. You know, I pick a hip movement. You know, it could be squat or deadlift that day, and whatever I picked on Wednesday, if I pick squat, then I'm going to do more bridges because I need more posterior work because the squat, you know, works more in my anterior area. Or if I pick deadlift, then I might do front squats for my next one, 3 sets, you know, 8 to 12 reps on my auxiliary exercises. And then I work through leg extension, leg curls and whatnot, calf raises. And then Thursday is chest again, but then again, it's a more of a, I call it the Steve workout, where now I'm going to do 3 sets per body part, chest, shoulders, triceps. And I keep my rep range between 8 and 12. If I can press it 8 times, I'm going to keep the weight. If I do it more than 12, I'm going to increase the weight. If I can't do 8, you know, and hey, every day is a little different, you know. There's days I get in there and, you know, 275 for 10 reps is not a big deal for me. But all of a sudden, there's been days where I've gone 275 and on rep 8, I'm struggling. I'm like, hey, guys, in the next 2 sets, I'm going to lower it. And I kind of know in my brain for the rest of the workout, all right, today's not the day.
There's something going on, man. Yeah.
So I'm going to lower it down to get through it, because the one thing I've really embraced, and I say this a lot, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. So if you feel like you don't want to work out today, still go work out, still go train, go do something. I don't care if you just jump in the yoga class, or if you just, you know, you sit on the bicycle and read a book for 30 minutes. You're still turning in a percentage. And I tell people this is all the long game, right? So at the end of the week, if I turn into 100% on Monday and a 100% on Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm feeling kind of tired and it's at 80, right? Well, Thursday, all of a sudden the guy goes, oh, you know what? I'm going to take the day off. So you've turned in a 0, right? Or I'll go to the gym, go ahead and do elliptical for, you know, 30, 40 minutes, maybe stretch out, do a couple different, some sandbag tosses, something just, you know, maybe fun that's just going to get me going, right? And I turn in a 40%. Well, you turn in a 0, I turn in a 40. I'll probably feel better and turn in a better score on Friday because I did a little bit more active recovery, right? You're still now feeling sluggish because you took a full day off. Your body went into rest and recovery mode. You can't get out of it, you know? And so now then Saturday hits and maybe you have an okay day, but now I'm stellar. I'm flying off the handle. At the end of the week, Sunday, when we do our average score on how we turned in our effort, I murdered you. Because no matter how much you can beat me on Saturday, even if I turn in an 80 and you turn in a 100, I turned in a 40, you turned into 0. You know what I mean? It's math again.
Yeah. And I think something else that is there too, that again, you've mastered, is the mental game. Is, you know, when you take that day off, especially depending upon how long you've been training or whatnot, that's the thing that then leads to the next day of taking off, and then the next day. And then, next thing you know, you're not doing anything and you're really off. So that's, I think the mental toughness of just, again, getting it done and keeping the streak alive, so to speak, is huge.
What area that really helps me with is my diet. I think a diet, like most people, are all or nothing. So meaning if I get up and eat breakfast and I'm going to eat a good lunch, and I eat a good lunch, I'm going to eat a good dinner, right? But how many times, like, you might have a work meeting or I'll have a business meeting with somebody at noon, and they're like, oh, this, and you end up cheating on your diet. You have that burger when you shouldn't have ordered. You should have had the chicken and rice and broccoli, right? You're like, oh, or they had great salmon you should have ordered, but you decided to go ahead and go with like the sea bass and it's glazed, right?
Yeah.
Speaking from experience, I actually did the same.
always.
Sea bass, man, with that glaze was great. So anyways, so now all of a sudden the old Frank Mir, the old me would have gone, well, shit, then let's order a pizza tonight. Let's go ahead and, it's off. I'll start over tomorrow. Or then worse yet, it's Wednesday and you screwed up your diet. You screwed up the rest of the day. You're like, I'll start again Monday, right? It's like, no, you messed up. That's fine. Are you going to turn in a perfect score at the end of the night? No, you made a mistake. But just because you messed up doesn't mean you have to continue messing up. You can sit there and turn it around. All right, you know what? I made some bad decisions at lunchtime. I'm going to make the right decision at dinner, and not overcompensating, because I hate it when people do that too. My wife, right? She was like, well, I'm only going to drink a protein shake and go to bed with no carbs, no nothing in my system now because of what I ate, to try to balance it out. I'm like, no, just now you're yo-yoing back and forth. Just go ahead. What did we plan to eat tonight? Oh, I had this cooked, we're going to have, steak and vegetables, I'm like, a sweet potato. I'm like, phenomenal. Let's just eat that anyway. If you want to cut back a little bit of your calories, I'm not going to complain, but still, like, you want to get your body feeling the best. The diet shouldn't be about restriction as much as like giving me everything I need to be healthy and the right amounts, not too much to be better for the next day.
Yeah. And again, it mentally messes with you too, because then you start to beat yourself up and, all the other stuff. So, and then it just is a vicious cycle
attached to it.
Yep, absolutely. Before we get into the fight that you got coming up, I got to ask this one question. I mean, you fought some just beasts. I would argue the biggest, baddest people in the world, and you're one of them. Crow Cop and Fedor, all of them. Talk to me. And it might not be one of these guys, but who was, in your opinion, one of your toughest fights, and most aggressive fights, or
Well, Nogueira was always my hardest fights. And even though I have 2 victories over him, and I could point out some of my losses, and you might say, well, that fight was harder for you. I'm like, well, during the fight, yes. But leading up to the fight, I've never felt more helpless or more terrified as that I felt with Nogueira, because I didn't realize that, I had something that most other guys don't have. It's like, well, I know that in this one aspect of fighting, I'm the best in the world. And that's grappling, So with grappling, I know that when it comes to submission skills, that like there's nobody better than me, right? Yep. And so I had that in my feather in my pocket going, or my hat going through my fights. And then all of a sudden it hit me when I was fighting Nogueira. I was in the back of MGM Grand, and I'm sitting there, and he's over on the other side backstage. He's warming up, and his cornermen are blocking him, and I'm looking, I'm like, and I never realized, I've always said this to myself, like, well, worst comes to worst, when we hit the ground, I'll choke you out, right? And my brain actually went to say those words, and I was like, oh, he was a black belt before I started jiu-jitsu. This guy was the guy who was considered the best submission guy in the world. And this fight is here to go ahead and decide who's the best, right? I'm like, oh, I'm not just, I might be better, but that wasn't what was giving me confidence. It was that I was so much better than everybody else that gave me that almost kind of like, oh, well, I'm good. It'll be fine. And so that being taken away from me made me panic. And if you actually watch the first fight, there was times where I had him on the ground. I hit him with a foot sweep, knocked him down, and I'm on top. And all of a sudden, like as I'm going through his wrist control, you see me exactly like I back out. I stood up and go, no, we're gonna contest this on our feet. I'm not even gonna go there because of how it was, out of how much respect of how good he was in that area.
Yeah, man. And I have to ask this, if you don't want to answer, you're cool. But like,
no.
With regard to Lesnar, what created the hatred? What created the, just the animosity there?
Honestly, I don't think a lot of people realize this. They don't, because why would they, right?
Yeah.
Leading up to the fight, and even the second fight, like we would see each other backstage and talk. Like there was no real issues. It was very much made up. you know,
Got it.
as
Yeah.
far as, you know, just sell tickets, you know.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
he comes from a pro wrestling background. He understood. And I remember the very first fight, he pulled me to the side, you know, pulled me aside. We were going backstage to do our autographs and stuff and things leading up to the first fight. And he was like, hey man, you know, like, you know, this, you know, I'm in the business of selling tickets. I'm like, oh yeah, totally. And I said, as long as we don't say nothing about our wives or our children, you know, everything else is on the table. I don't care. I'm not a sensitive person. You know? And he's like, yeah, same. So then after we had to do, it was funny because we had to do a photo shoot at Red Rock and they had the whole main events for UFC 100. So it was Rashad Evans, I think Quentin Jackson were fighting each other that fight because they had to be separated. So when I got there, they're like, we already almost had a fight break out between Rashad and Quentin. We got them separated, and, you know, well, while one's doing makeup, we have you in another room, and then we're switching, and we can't. Like, they messed up. They had them crossing in the hallway, and they almost went at it. I'm like, so like we're Brock and you, and I'm like, me and Brock don't have no problem. In fact, we actually got on the elevator together. Everybody was panicking, and Brock started making jokes about his blazer because I got gorilla arms, man. I got like pull my arms in, you know, blazers all, you know. And we were actually both making fun of the people that was like, dude, we're professionals. Like,
yeah,
we're not fighting each other here.
Yeah,
you know,
that's crazy.
No big deal. But then after the fight, there's a scene where he like got in my face after he won the fight. And maybe he's just that good of an actor, but we've never gotten to speak about it since then. But when the fight was over with and that's why like you almost see me look kind of shocked at him. He's like, hey, wait a minute. This has been fake the whole time. And now you're like, you know what I mean? Like, first of all, you just hit me hard enough in the head for the referee to stop the fight. Yeah. So like, you know, like this isn't the time or place, like chill for a second. Let me regroup myself. The fact that I was like, oh, this is really you. You really were taking this personal. This really did upset you, all the jokes I was making. I'm like, oh, you're a thin-skinned little, well, bleep it out. Yeah. And so then that became real for me. I was like, you know what? I can't wait to get back in here. It won't be just a business fight anymore. Like, I'm going to take the fine. I'm going to take a limb home with me.
That's great. Well, you know, one thing too, I want to touch on is you've mentioned your kids several times and, you know, you're training with your kids and you've trained for your kids. You said, you know, your daughter, I believe, won the state or national, it was a championship, but you know,
she'll be a 4-time state champion here in a month.
Beautiful.
She won it as an 8th grade. She went into the high school state tournament, won it. And then she just went to nationals. She pinned her way through even in the finals.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, you know, we've talked a lot about the mental side, the physical side, but, you know, what were the lessons, you know, what were the big things that you learned through your life that you made sure that you were diligent about, you know, passing down to her?
Well, I think the one thing that I'm a broken record about is injuries and addressing them properly. The old me, and I think that's because I grew up in a fight gym. My dad owned a gym. And so I was the little brat running around. So I was always around fighters. And it's almost like a badge of honor to tape up an injury, throw down a bunch of Aleve or ibuprofen or both, you know, and just go out there and perform anyways during practice. You know, it was like a badge of honor, you know, like, oh, well, you know, just, you know, rub some dirt on it, and walk it off. Now I realize that this is the only body that I'm ever going to have. And I mean, stem cells, great. I'm working on things, but preventative measures are much better. So you can't prevent all injuries. You know, they're going to occur. If you bang up against the wall enough times, something's going to break, right? But the way now I handle injuries, and I don't think that you have to, and again, I'm not into sitting in bed. I think that's the worst thing you can do for yourself. But I mean, there has to be injury, you know, rehabilitation and addressing, going to the gym and going, hey, I have a hurt hip. Today's a squat day. Well, we're just going to go ahead and, you know, I'll take a bunch of painkillers and we'll just get through it. Like, no, The old me. Yeah, that's what I did. And wonder why I was so broken up by the time I was, you know, almost 40 years old. Now it's like, well, you know what? Hey, what if we did this, some hip mobility stuff, and opened you up there? And then, you know what? If we do a stiff leg, and maybe feel like if that hurts your hip as much. Oh, it doesn't? Well, hey, why don't we work that? We'll lessen the load. You'll still get some neurological adaptations, some firing, but we're not going to enforce the hip. Let's cut our workout down to 40 minutes. Let's do the recumbent bike, you know, get some blood flow. I mean, so you can train, but training intelligently, you know, and that's the one thing with Bella, that she has she's even way more mentally focused. My kids are. I always make jokes that like I'm their break as far as like my kids, like my youngest, even the other day we were deadlifting at Nick's and we put 135 on there, right? And he goes and he I'm like, oh, no, at that point it was only 95 pounds. So we have 95 pounds on the bar. He only weighs 90 pounds. So I'm like, okay, Ro, you could do it 3 times. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. So he goes and he lifts it up once, 2, 3, nice form, sets it down. And then he has this look in his face. He's going for more. He's going for more. So after the 6th rep, I put my foot on the bar. I'm like, stop, like you're
how old is he?
Yourself. He's 11.
11. Nice.
And that's my kids. All 3 of them are that way big time. I always have to tell people because I bring different coaches in to work with Bella, and so I tell them like, hey, if you play any mental toughness games, like for example, like make her go on a handstand and leave the room and see how long she stays up against the wall because they're going to break. I'm like, don't do that. You'll kill her. She'll break her neck before she quits. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, probably one of the most proud moments I had as a father, to give a description of my boys, right? And then how it worked with Bella. She was bad at me, but my boys go to the football team. My son actually just won nationals for 14U, so they're the number 1 football player team in the country for 8th graders, basically. They went down to Florida, played the best teams from Texas, Florida, up north, Ohio, everything. They came in first. So when they first tried out for the team, they have different age groups. And at this time, my son, I think, was on the 12U because he was 11. And my other son was on 8U. And so they have all the teams training together. So there's probably 80 kids out on this field. Well, the coach, he has a military background, went to college. So he kind of has that, drill sergeant kind of approach to his practices. I like him. He's a great guy, but he's having them do up downs, right? Chop their feet down, chop their feet up downs, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there watching and about 30 kids started dropping off. They're crying, they're stopping. At about 50, there was only about 5 or 6 kids still going. There was kids bawling, it was like, so I'm sitting there and the parents are talking because it's boring to watch a kid do up downs. So I think I'm the only parent really kind of watching what's going on. I'm like sitting there. And then my wife was like, Frank, because whenever I'm being rude, because I have a little bit of a fast working mind, I'll start going off on different tangents when people are talking to me. She tries to bring me back. She's like, Frank, so middle conversation, I forgot what parent was talking to me. I just stood up and I started walking. I was like, do you see what I'm watching right now? They got up to about 60 up downs, and the only 2 kids still doing it were my sons. Both of them out there. And that had nothing to do with physical gifts. That had nothing to do with anything. They weren't going to get punished by me. But when I saw that, the youngest, Stephen, too, he's 8 years old, and there was 12, 13, 14-year-old kids that had given up. And my sons, they weren't the prettiest up downs in the world, but they were getting down and getting up and still moving their feet. And when I talk about things like that's invaluable, like that lesson that I've bestowed upon my children that somehow they've taken and they're running with it and they beat me at it now. That's going to carry over and do anybody well in life, but then there are times where it's detrimental. And here's like the dark side of that story. Everything has a dark side, right? Bella was an extremely accomplished softball player. She actually led our league with home runs and stolen bases. She's just gifted athlete, shortstop, all-star. She was player of the year twice in a row. And so one game they're playing a scrimmage and she goes to steal third base and the girl goes to try to tag her. The third baseman was large for a softball girl, who was 12 years old. She's probably 135 pounds, 140 pounds, decent sized girl who actually hit a lot of home runs too. She was a big, powerful girl. Yeah. She drops down to her knee to tag Bella out. Well, Bella tries to get under it. So she slides her foot, hits the base. The girl drives her knee right in the top of Bella's quadricep. Bad, hyperextended her knee and everything, right? So they stopped the play. I don't want to ever run on the field and embarrass my children, but I was at the dugout waiting for her, right? So they bring her over there, and I'm looking at her, and we had one of the guys one of the other fathers is an orthopedic, so he's looking at it, grabbing her, mobilization of the leg. It's all, no, it's fine. Obviously you can always get an MRI. He goes, I'll write you up one if you feel, more comfortable. He goes, but I got to be honest with you, I think she's just, she's gonna have a really deep contusion and it's just, a bruise and it's just, she might have, hyperextended a little bit, but nothing's torn. She's having, he checked both knees. I'm like, all right, cool. All right, so we'll finish the play. Just, obviously we got to finish the game, stay here with your coaches. Now we don't have to leave. She said, well, no, I'm going to go back out. I'm like, what? She's like, oh, no, I need to play. I'm like, you're not playing. Why? You're limping right now. Your leg is hurt. I said, this is how you throw your back out. You might tear your knee or something because it's compromised. I'm all, Bella. And like, and now I'm looking at her like in disbelief that I'm having this argument with my daughter. I'm like, it's a scrimmage. You know what I mean? Like, this doesn't count. But every day that she wakes up out of bed, it counts for her.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, and I've got a smile and laughing, not at the story, but because of, I probably should have listened to your advice yesterday because I decided to play in a basketball league and a softball league in the same night after not playing for 10 years and messed up one hamstring and then messed up the other. So, well, Frank, you know, I want to make sure that we dive into the fight that you got coming up. It's April 17th, I believe next week after, you know, we launched this, and, you know, you were supposed to fight Tarver. Now you're fighting Cunningham, but talk me through, you know, how did you get involved in the, you know, getting this fight? And then, you know, how have you been able to deal with the adaptation of, you know, changing fighters and what you're going to have to do next week?
Well, I mean, basically, thank God I was in really good shape leading up to it, because I thought it would be a weapon with Tarver, because, you know, he's 52. He's not known for being in phenomenal shape, even when he was in his prime. You know, he's somebody who's extremely smart, and because of his intelligence, probably, you know, got away with not being in the greatest shape. And so, you know, sometimes success can test your mettle, right? Yep. And so when they switched it, I was fighting a guy who's actually more dangerous at this point in his career, who has great conditioning. You know, you go on the guy's Instagram, you look at him, the guy's, you know, I think he's about 8% body fat, weighs about 205 pounds. He's a little taller than I am, like he's a full 6'3", whereas I'm like 6'2.5". And he has an 82-inch reach compared to my 79. So he actually has length on me, even though I have a lot of size weight advantage. And so the reason why I took the fight is because I've always wanted to push myself in different areas as a martial artist. I tell people it's almost like a strongman competitor going, hey, I need to get better at some of my strength lifts. Let me sign up for powerlifting meet. Because, you know, if you sign up for powerlifting meet and you're going to go compete, you're going to push those areas. Yep. You know, it's like the Diaz brothers. They're phenomenal cardio guys, right? Well, it's because they sign up for triathlons. You know, so they're constantly putting themselves in those situations that, hey, I know I'm going to really push my cardio if I got a triathlon next month. I'm going to swim, bike, and run, obviously, a lot more than I would have if I'm just trying to do those things. So that's why I tell people, hey, you know what? No matter what your age, jump into competition, do stuff, find things to do, because you're going to be more diligent about training, about your eating, about your rest, because in the back of your mind, you have a due date. You know, it's like if you say, hey, I want to teach myself math. That's great. But if you sign up for an online math course, don't you think you're going to do it a little bit more? Because now you have due dates and you have a structure set in front of you that's going to help keep you motivated and an obligation to get out of bed and do the right things.
Awesome. And so anything else that you want to help promote, you know, as going into this fight that you got coming up?
My daughter and I are big advocates of CBD, but the American Shaman brand, obviously, I'm an ambassador for it. So, I mean, people think I'm just saying it, but I've been ambassadors for other businesses, and I jumped out of them because I didn't believe in the product. This product is unbelievable. You can go on miramericanshaman.com, and it has it all set up. That's my wife, or my daughter and mine's link. And that way you can look on there and see the different products that we take. I'm telling you guys, I thought the CBD thing was just, you know, a bunch of, snake oil. And it was with some of the products I was taking, because the CBD is not FDA regulated. So there's nobody going through there going, hey, does this bottle say what it has to say? Vince, the owner of American Shaman, is on the forefront of all that, wanting to be attested and doing stuff. And so his products are unbelievable. And the nanotechnology is just unreal. I can't say it enough. And then I think I spoke earlier about, you know, I alluded to, I had a little bit of an issue with pain pills. And, and again, it's one of those things you want to punish yourself about. You know, some people have issues with McDonald's. Some people have shopping issues. You know, we all have our issues, but trying to sit there and suppress them, I tell people that's never a good idea, because, you know, look at the Catholic Church. You tell a bunch of men they're not allowed to get married, and there's problems are going to happen. You know what I mean? You can't have sex, can't get married. And so you can't suppress your nature. You can redirect it in a healthy way, though. And so Kratom is something I'm big on. Mitrospect is a company that I work with. Kratom is an all natural, comes from a cousin of a coffee plant. And that product, I mean, and again, like I don't make money on it. I just want to guide people the right direction. That their products are phenomenal, and Triumph has a good kratom product also, and they're coming out with a liquid one. But hopefully, the liquid product is going to be on a different level. But if you guys think that you're at home and you're taking way too many painkillers, or your pain is an issue, check out Mitrospect.
Got it, man. Well, I can't thank you enough. Good luck and wish you the absolute best on the fight. I'll be watching for sure. And so,
thank you.
And hopefully I'll be able to meet you in person too one day up in Vegas. So thank you again, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it'd be great. You come down the Lifetime there in Vegas. We'll just have a workout.
For sure. Absolutely.
Share some ideas. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Have a great day.
Jason, thank you, brother.